Welcome to Made for More. My name is Aaron Burke. I'm your host. I'm super pumped that you're joining us for this episode. Do me a favor right now. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this with your friends. Every time you leave a review, it helps us to get the word out. And it's so cool hearing all the response from the first few episodes. And we're really glad you're joining us today. We have a huge honor of having Phil Klein, the church genius that I have gotten to know really well this last year. If you don't know about Phil, let me give you a little bit of his bio. He's the founder and leader of Focus 412. If you want to know about Focus 412, go to focus412.com. He has a vision and calling to help churches grow, and him and his team partner with churches to help create healthy organizations and develop great leaders. He has done that for Radiant, and he's done a great job with it. Phil's background is leading and scaling large multi-site businesses. He's a trained StrengthsFinders coach. You've taught me a lot about StrengthsFinders. And a founding partner and certified John Maxwell speaker and trainer. Phil, we're glad that you're here. Thanks for being with us. We always like to do something fun to start out so people get to know you a little bit. Yeah. First of all, tell us a little bit about your family.
My family is amazing. We have Grace and I have two daughters, and we live in Birmingham, Alabama. And I have one daughter at UNC Chapel Hill, and the other one is part of Hope City, a great church down in Texas.
That's awesome. Give us a little bit of your business background.
I actually came up through the cable industry. Started off literally in summer. One summer, took a job as a cable installer, and woke up one day and I was the chief operating officer of
started from the bottom
a cable operation. So just kind of came up from the bottom and learned it as I went. Yeah.
Wow. And how did you get from that to the church world?
I was part of Elevation Church in Charlotte with Pastor Stephen Furtick, and really towards the beginning, and was a volunteer and got asked to come on to the lead team, and it was just an incredible experience. And through that experience, I kind of understood where the church and the common things between, organizationally, that the church is an organization. It's the most amazing one with the most amazing mission, but it was really understanding kind of the things that both of those entities could teach each other, what the church could teach the business world, and kind of vice versa. So it's kind of a blend of those things, which really are all just principles God created of leadership that we're all supposed to use. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're living in Birmingham, running Focus 412, helping churches. Let me ask you some fun questions. We kind of do this lightning round. I think it's a lot of fun.
Here we go.
Are you a Netflix guy?
Yeah.
All right, favorite Netflix?
Drive to Survive.
Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
I haven't even heard of that.
Yeah, it's about It's an introduction to Formula One.
Yes, you did a talk with us about Formula One drivers.
That's right. I literally, it's a brilliant strategy. It's the Formula One, which is a worldwide sport, very elite sport. It's kind of like the entry to that. You watch this documentary about it and get so hooked on it. Now I've literally become a Formula One fan. So I've gone from the Netflix version to every Sunday night I am watching the recorded F1 race that happened in Italy or wherever. So I've become a huge, so that was my Netflix. It's like a gateway drug, It's
I get it. Your whole talk on that was like, the small percentage of change makes the biggest difference.
And it's what drew me to F1 was it really, everything in my brain gets converted to leadership, and it's about how do you become that good at something where the difference between the number one driver in the world, there's only 20 drivers in the whole. So think of like NFL. To be an elite NFL athlete seems almost, as a kid, almost like an impossible dream, because so many people aren't able to do that. There's very few, but there's three times that on one team. In the Formula One world, there are 20 drivers. So the precision in both the car and the driver has to be at a level though. So I'm fascinated by things that are that high of a level of execution and expertise.
Well, now you got all of our listeners ready to go. They're going to watch it. Okay, let's throw some more questions out at you. Favorite book you've ever read?
Oh my gosh, favorite book I've ever read. So the Bible.
I have to put the Bible. I said other than the Bible.
Other than the Bible.
Or a good book.
I think it's called Chasing Daylight. It's by Erwin McManus. It was called what was the original title? I can't, but it's called Chasing Daylight now. It's
Sweet.
an amazing book by Erwin McManus.
Okay. Favorite cereal?
Um,
Are you a cereal guy?
Yeah, so like I've turned into a healthy cereal guy. Back in the day, it would be Captain Crunch.
Oh, that's the one.
It's like,
I know. Is there healthy cereal? I guess there's healthy cereal.
There is.
All right. One last question on this. We'll get into the topic. If you were to eliminate one fast food restaurant off the planet, like you could eliminate it so nobody ever has to eat there again, what would you eliminate?
Wow.
You'd say this is the worst place I ever ate at.
I was going to say McDonald's, but a good friend runs like 20 McDonald's. So if she ever listen to this. So we'll say McDonald's for now.
McDonald's is a good one. Actually, it's a very popular one that people say. All right. We're going to talk today about the topic of spotting and developing leaders.
Yep.
Huge topic. Give us this idea of why is spotting and developing leaders so important?
Yeah. I mean, it rolls up to why leaders are important. I mean, when God wants to do something, he always chooses a leader, and then the leader is always, a team always comes around the leader. It's always the first thing that happened before a big thing happens, whether it be, in the church or outside of the church. So it's like, it's raising up leaders is the success or non-success of anything you're going to do. And it's also the only thing you can't synthesize in a short period of time, which means if you're not doing it, you can't catch up later and say, I've created this opportunity over time, and now I need an expanded leadership team to address the greater demand for what I'm doing. And for us in the church, it's reaching more people. I always say, like, with enough money, you can solve almost any problem. You can build a building. You can have a bunch of people that want to come hear the word of God. You can have buildings. You can have money to create great, experiences. And if you don't have leaders, you can't expand. And you can't say, okay, I need to go buy some leaders tomorrow. You can't do that. So it's literally a cycle that really, realistically, is a 5 to 7 year cycle to, start building an engine that really produces as many leaders as you're going to need for your success. You
said it to our staff. You said finding leaders is the only problem that money can't solve.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a brilliant way of saying it, because you can buy a building, you can buy technology, you can't buy leaders.
Right.
So you got to spot them, you got to develop them. How do we do this?
Yeah. So I think it's being really good. I love the word spotting, because it's like we need to seek opportunities, see where people are at. One of the things I would say is we always go after the obvious, right? There's that person that's the term I would use is a star. Like, you can spot a star from 5 miles away. The problem with stars is they're and there's nothing wrong and there's not a problem, but one of the challenges is that if they're easy to spot and they're amazing and you can plug them in and they're just going to lead, there's going to be a lot of competition for those people in other places, whether it be within your organization or outside of your organization. So I have this thought and this experience that there's stars, which I just described, and then there's what I would call sleepers. And in my experience in the world and in leadership, I've experienced a lot of great leaders that really were once upon a time sleepers, and I'll explain as we talk kind of what that looks like. But I think sleepers are people that are not necessarily in the front of the room. They might not be the greatest communicators, but they possess a lot of qualities that can be created into leadership that just are, we'll call it quiet strengths that we have to kind of discover.
So how do you spot them if they're not up front, if they're not out where everybody knows them?
Right.
Like I think it sounds great, but then how do you know that if everybody's not a sleeper, that's not
Yeah, because sleepers don't make much noise, meaning they're usually hard at work getting stuff done, right?
Okay.
So I always say, look in parts of your organization or just outside your organization when you're out, kind of in your church and in your encounters, look for where stuff is getting done versus look for people doing things, if that makes sense. So looking in areas where progress is being made and then kind of getting underneath that and saying, why are we being so successful in this area, or why is this team being so successful? And oftentimes there's a unassuming, quiet nose to the grindstone, has a great plan, and is executing with a low ego, and making that happen. So it's like, but those things aren't usually, again, those aren't the people that are saying, look what I did.
Right.
So they're not calling your attention to it. I think another thing is, look, let's, take a page out of the retail or playbook of people trying to sell stuff to us. A good marketer will say, what I want to know is, when I know the profile of the person I'm trying to reach, I try to figure out what they like to do, where they like to hang out, because that's what, that's how we're profiled by people, right? Yeah. So they know, like, I'm with what you're trying to sell me, you want to go to the place that I do the things I like to enjoy and engage me there. It's kind of like, unfortunately, it's like what cigarette manufacturers used to do. It's like, figure out what they like to do and introduce them to those things. So, show up at those events. So I think I see it in the same way. It's like, what do people who are, who work hard, are deeply in purpose, and like to get stuff done and are good at doing it, what are those characteristics? Where are they at? They usually hang out with other people that have those same same attributes, if you will. So a lot of times we forget to ask the leaders that are emblematic of what we're looking for, if they know anybody like them, if you will, or their
really
friend,
good.
Or
It's
their,
a great question.
Their friend groups, if you will.
Right. So I've always found that you don't always go after the most available people, because there's normally a reason they're so available. You're basically saying, don't also go after the loudest people, because they can be making a lot of noise but not a lot of difference.
Right.
So how do you go after the ones that are the high producers? I think of you were running, a high level leader, you're serving at a local church, someone taps you on the shoulder and says, I see church leadership in you. I see this thing.
Right.
How do you entice those kind of high capacity leaders to say, hey, what we're doing is important for you to put your time to, and bringing them on your team? Yeah.
I think people that have deep purpose, people that want to make a difference, have the ability to do that, and have the humility to say, I just want to plug in and make a difference. But then the next thing is really, I want to do that in a place that's going to give me a return, as Lee Domain would say, a friend of mine would say, an eternal return on investment, right?
ROI,
and it's not just, and I'm applying that same principle, but it's to, the framework has to be in place where it has to be obvious how I would plug into that. If I am attracted by it, like, it can't be a guessing game how I would get involved if I want to get involved. Is there is there an obvious way for me to get involved? Are there things in place, systems and structures, that I feel like if I did get involved, I would be able to get the work done, versus fighting a system or trying to figure out how I get the work done?
Right.
So I think having systems and structure in place, structure and accountability, draws great leaders. Great leaders don't want to be in a position where they're going to make a contribution, and that contribution could be frittered away, if you will, because it's within a structure that they can't do their best work, for lack of a better term.
It's brilliant. They only have so much time.
Right.
Everybody's pulling at them. They want to know. I'm not going to be fighting bureaucracy.
Right.
I'm not going to have the red tape. So talk about presenting the why to them. How often, how important is it to keep the why in front of leaders like that?
Yeah, I think culture is everything. I think it's the thing that the church has that the world probably doesn't have on the most part. There are very few companies, and I've worked for a bunch. We had a lot of consolidation, when I started, which would have been almost 40 years ago in the cable industry. There was they used to talk about the top 1,000 cable companies. There's 5 now.
Right.
So I think I've worked for 18 different cable companies, because they kept, a new owner would come in. So I've been a part of so many different cultures. But I think the difference between us and the world, and one of our secret sauces, if you will, from a leadership perspective, and I say that because I think sometimes we feel like as a church, Apple's got leadership down and we're just we're not really in the big leagues. I really think there are some aspects of leadership that we've started to become, really, really good at. And I think that's a lot of that has to do with the things that we would assume everybody does, which is to develop a really great culture where you understand why we do what we do. We understand how we interact with each other. We understand what our shared values are,
Yeah.
and we execute towards a purpose. Like, those are not necessarily components of the world. And if I'm out there and I'm trying to lead and trying to make a difference, and you can show me a place that I can lead, whether it be as a volunteer part-time or whether to be eventually to come onto staff, that may be very attractive to me versus the world I work in, which is just being a piece of a puzzle that I'm not even really sure, where it goes. So I think culturally, and not getting into this mindset that, like, you're on a staff or you're a volunteer, and if you're a volunteer, you show up and plug in somewhere.
Right.
But there's this big difference between the two. We're all on the same mission. We all need to play a vital role, and some of us may be on staff, some of us may get paid, but it shouldn't affect the fact that I can lead and
Right.
be effective as a leader. So I think some of those things, the ability, because again, I may, in my regular job, if I'm a volunteer, I may not get the authority and the creative position to be able to really lead like I do at the church. Somebody may not believe in me like the church believes in me. So I'm trying to get it to a point where we take it out of positional leadership and put it into investment base, meaning instead of me serving my church believes there's something more in me, and they're investing in me. I can see that change in my life. I can see how it changes my work life, my family life, who I am as a father, who I am as a son. That's when I go, hey, I want some more of that. I want to lead at a higher level. I want you to, I want to be challenged more in that area. And I think, again, we bring some components to that, whether it be talking about who you are versus what you do and those things. I think those are components that we think are obvious, but probably need to be communicated and shared, because
people forget.
Yeah.
Even the greatest level leaders, they just forget, why are we doing this? What are we doing? Oh, I'm setting up a trailer. I'm volunteering at the soup kitchen.
Right.
They forget the why often.
Right.
And so that idea of knowing who you are, reminding people of them. Let me ask you a question off of this, because a lot of people kind of get burned because they can maybe spot good leaders and recruit them, but they can't keep them.
Yeah.
I know people that have businesses and they hire great people. They're like, my greatest people always leave.
Right.
How do you retain great leaders?
Yeah. That's a great question, and it's a tough one. But I mean, one of the things that I think is key that we don't always think of is, and it relates to what we were just talking about, and that is, even some of the studies that have been done at some of the universities that have said, like, when people are doing a thing, there's people that come in and continue, and let's talk about volunteering, not just in the church, but overall volunteering. Sure. I come and I volunteer, and at some point I fade away and I don't do it anymore. And you go, why do some people just go on and continue to do that? And why do some people fade away? Specific to leadership. And the one delta that they found that makes all the difference in the world is it's how far removed are you from the good that you're doing. Meaning,
that is a game changer right there. That resolves most church problems right there, most volunteer problems right there.
Yes.
How far removed are you from the difference? Yeah.
Right. So it's like in literally, I think it was Harvard that did this huge study, and they said the big aha was the people that couldn't see the life change that happened because of what they were doing, not just this is why we do it, but seeing the couple that that was broken and came, and this was their last resort, found community, which got them into healing, and then healing, like, to know that you are a part of that is literally the difference. With the same physical effort, the same mental effort, the same schedule that you're balancing to go do that work, of why people are like the Energizer Bunny and they can just keep going and going. And it's literally that one factor, and it's like a light switch.
I go to the football game, I sit in the stands, I eat the hot dog, but I'm not there for any time I actually see a touchdown.
Absolutely.
And then when I don't see the touchdown, I forget, why am I even here?
Right.
And the less that you see them they actually see the impact they're making, they just ask themselves, why am I here all the time? Why am I running this group anymore? Why am I giving these dollars? So
it's the numbers and the stories, those two things.
Numbers and the stories. Can you push that a little bit more? Like, what does that mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, like, you have to have metrics to measure what you're doing. And people say, well, you're making it about the numbers. It's about people. Well, every person is a number.
Right.
You know, if you don't count me, I would want you to know, like, that I'm here and where I'm at. If you're saying these are the steps that can change your life, and you know, if we have these 4 steps we want you to take, you don't need to take them all now, but you need to take one. If you don't know where I'm at, you don't know which step I need to take, which means you can't really help me to my next best because you don't. So I'm all about understand the dynamics of where people are at, the step they need to take, have metrics that measure how well, or if we're going to try something and we need to see what effect it has, have more people taken that step because of what we tried? If the answer is no, then we shouldn't be doing that anymore.
That's so good.
So I think that's the number side of it, is like, how do we really understand, instead of just throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall, that what we're doing, and is it moving the needle, and what moves the needle the most that's aligned with our vision? And then the other piece is, what is the evidence in life change stories? Like, how many people have we, stories do we have that we have collected, curated, and repeated? So people, that's what, vision is where we're going. And it's also, vision is what refuels me through getting me to that next level. It's like, I need to understand what I'm doing. And it's those stories of people, real people, that are those tangible one-offs, as well as the volume of things. Do you know that that's happened this many times in the last month?
So good. I always got to this place where I'm like, well, they should just trust me. I promise you, it's working. It's working. And they don't trust you. They want to know tangibles. But if they knew what I knew, I think people would serve more. They would give more. They'd be more bought in. But they don't know because I don't tell them the stories. And that's really good. All right, good. Last question, because we're about out of time. All right, leading during COVID. There's a lot of pastors, leaders. If you're listening to this later, right now we're in November of 2020. Crazy election, COVID season. What have you seen kind of the lessons going through this season, and kind of give people some wisdom moving forward? Yeah,
lots. I mean, the first thing I would tell people that are thinking through this is I would want to encourage everybody to say nobody is figured out. Nobody came out of this going, I wrestled this to the ground and I won. Everybody feels pretty trampled right now. It doesn't mean that you're just laying there on your back, letting the world run over you. It doesn't mean that, but it does mean, like I get to deal with some of the greatest leaders in the country, I think, in the church, and nobody has said to me, like, I'm all over it. I got it all figured out. All the best leaders I work with have said, I've not figured this out yet. But so it's just continuing to understand and learn from it. And I think some of the lessons from it are that I think the biggest one that I've seen is a lot of people got caught in kind of flat-footed and frozen because everything got tossed up in the air. And when everything's in the air and you're a leader, your job is always, everybody's looking for you to say, what do we do? And it was so massive and complex that how do I tell people what to do when I don't know what to do? And one of the things we've talked about a lot in leadership is, in order to move forward, when you have an equation that you don't have all the pieces for, what do you need to do? If it's math, you plug in an assumption, right? It's a letter or whatever. So I've been sharing with people, part of executing is to say, like, I know a couple things I can do, but there's some unknowns. You have to take a guess, meaning I don't know how I move forward until I make an assumption of when COVID dies down and starts to really tail off. I have no idea when that's going to happen, but I have to force myself to say, I'm going to pick an arbitrary date that's my best guess. And for those of us who are anal, like, it's just a guess. Right. And I'm going to say it's going to be June of next year. I'm making that up. So based on June of next year, I can now start making budgetary decisions. I can start saying, what am I going to do with my team? Meaning, do I have enough money to not lay anybody off? Right. Well, if it's March, I do. And if it's June, maybe I don't. But if you don't know what that date is, so I think it's making assumptions so you can move forward, because we can't stand still.
Yeah.
But you're not also going to have all the answers. So make some assumptions, fill in the blanks with guesses, but firm those guesses up, and then develop a plan that you can execute on. And it may not be the right plan, but you can at least start executing.
That's brilliant, Phil. All right, people that are church leaders, they want to grow their church. Give them a little plug about Focus 412.
We're just a team that is called to help churches grow, and we believe that building healthy organizations really means what we talked about, which is it's how do I develop great systems, put it into a great structure, bring on great people, and wrap a culture around it that can make it, the culture's kind of the band that wraps around all of it. And if those things, they're never all going to be perfect, but if I have good plans and good execution in those areas, I'll be healthy, and that's kind of what most great organizations look like.
Well, I'll just say they have helped us incredibly at Radiant Church. So we appreciate you, Phil. Appreciate Focus 412. You can get more information at focus412.com. Thank you for listening to Made for More. Make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Tag me on Instagram, Aaron R. Burke, with a little post that you've watched this. I want to see who you are. I'll see you, or I'll hear you, or I'll be part of your life on the next episode of Made for More. Thanks for being with us.